Hello everybody, it's Ramon here with Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary, and today's video is going to revolve around what we feed our animals and why. Canine nutrition is actually a very complex topic, and that is especially so the case when we're dealing with wild canines like wolves, wolf dogs, coyotes, foxes, New Guinea singing dogs, and Australian dingoes. We're going to take a deep dive into this topic and break down the different aspects of our primary carnivore diet and explain our reasoning for adding those ingredients and for its particular setup. We're going to explore this situation through three different pillars. The first pillar is the question, what is the most nutritious diet that we can feed our animals with the resources that we have available to us? The second pillar is the dilemma that we face in terms of feeding an animal something that resembles its evolutionarily influenced diet on a limited budget. And the third pillar is basically our answer and our solution to that question and that dilemma. Okay, so in order to give some context for the first pillar of this situation, we have to realize that nutrition is a major component of the health of an animal. And because they can't choose their diet, the responsibility falls on us to give them the best possible nutrition that they can get. And we have to be able to do that with our limited resources. At Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary, we don't just focus on giving animals shelter. We also make sure that they are getting the best nutrition possible. We're also giving them supplements, we're giving them medications, and overall we're just paying a lot of attention to what we give them to ingest, because we know that over years, as an animal eats the same diet over and over again, the small things will have a big impact. If budgetary concerns were not an issue, then this would be a lot easier. But because we are a non-for-profit that relies basically on donors just like yourself helping us out, we have to be able to work within certain parameters and yet still meet the requirements set forth by the physiology of an animal. There's a lot of logistics that go into feeding 60-something animals. We're talking about making calculations in terms of weight and the amount of nutrients spread out over a week to make sure that every animal is getting everything they need. Food preparation and making sure that we can disperse all these nutrients into the entire bulk of what we're making also becomes important. Storage, sanitation, and the available resources to create and put in the work necessary into this diet becomes a factor as well. Every single year, we actually sift through tens of thousands of pounds of meat in order to extract from the bulk of what we get the meat that is the freshest and the healthiest and the best quality for our animals. So there's that element to add on to it. Then we take that meat and we turn it into what is called a loaf, which is basically a frozen brick of meat that allows us to calculate a certain amount of weight and to easily throw it into our enclosures to feed animals in a much quicker manner than what would be required if we were going to go into each enclosure separately. To these loaves now, we can make all different types of alterations and add supplements and add nutrients in order to round out the diet of the animal. So what we have asked ourselves here at Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary is, how do we optimize that process? How do we take all these different elements, make them as efficient as possible, and put together the best quality nutrition that we can with the resources at our disposal? And so then that question leads us into the next element of this, which is our dilemma. So the primary dilemma that we're facing here is our capacity to recreate a diet that would resemble one that these animals would experience and consume in the wild in an artificial setting. It has to be understood that in the wild, these animals are basically consuming the proverbial from the nose to the tail. They are consuming the whole animal. That includes organs, bones, tendons, and ligaments, and also hide. So the components of this diet are nothing like what you would see in, let's say, a bag of kibble, or even in most types of raw animal diets. Of course, this is dependent on where the animal lives and what sort of prey they have access to, but nonetheless, those components are still the same. We're eating the whole animal, and we have a variety of things going into the diet. Another thing that has to be understood is that the nutritional components of a diet that includes things like organs and bones and tendons and ligaments and the whole animal overall is very different than a diet supplied only of muscle meat. We're looking at a different vitamin and mineral composition, a different amino acid profile, and also certain types of fibrous compounds that help the animal sort of digest and process its nutrients. So if we could just feed out a whole animal every day to every single enclosure, then that would sort of just handle itself. Nature would do what nature does, and we would not have to get involved. However, because of the limitations that we have on us, that is not possible at this point in time. It may be at some point possible, but right now it's something that we simply can't do. So then the question becomes, how do we recreate this? How do we do this in a way that works for us and all the previously mentioned logistics, as well as supplies all the nutrients that the animal needs and falls within our budget? Okay, and so finally, the third pillar is our solution, our answer to the two previous questions. And that is basically a very elegant combination of natural food-based nutrients from whole foods and the right supplements in order to try and approximate a wild diet as best as possible. So now I'm going to go through a quick breakdown of what we put into our carnivore diet and why. And don't worry, I'm not going to overload you with too much information. So the first thing that goes into the diet is, of course, muscle meat. Muscle meat forms the bulk and the carrier for all the other nutrients that are going to be going into the diet. Now, of course, while wild animals who do consume the whole animal when they eat are getting much more than muscle meat, they still are getting quite a bit of muscle meat. So muscle meat, because it's what we get donated to us and it's what's easiest for us to work with to create our loaf, is the bulk of what the animals are still getting and have been getting for a very long time. And this muscle meat can come from a variety of sources, including, but not limited to, chicken, elk, deer, and cows. The next component are whole eggs. And whole eggs actually solve a bunch of issues for us. For one, when we're thinking of a whole egg, we're also talking about the shell. And the shell, thankfully, supplies calcium, right? And so calcium is super important for animals that would normally be eating a ton of bone with their animals. Also important is that eggshells are very low in phosphorus. And because meat is very high in phosphorus, and the calcium to phosphorus ratio is super important for an animal, then whole eggs help us balance that out. Along with the shell that comes with the whole egg, egg yolks are full of nutrients. They're full of B vitamins, they're full of vitamin E, they have iodine in them and zinc and a bunch of other vitamins and minerals. So an egg is kind of like a little tiny multivitamin. So the next element of this diet is liver. Liver is, in all likelihood, literally the most nutritious food that any omnivorous or carnivorous animal can eat on this planet. It is chock full of nutrients, so much so that in excess, liver can actually make you sick because of hypervitaminosis, giving you too many nutrients. So it's very important to get liver just right. Liver solves all sorts of issues for us, and because we're feeding out liver, it actually takes care of a lot of what you would get from organ meats on their own, and we're doing that with just one organ meat that we can actually get within our budget. Next, we're going to be adding taurine. And taurine is an amino acid that is found in very high quantities in organ meats. And again, because the amino acid profile of organ meats and muscle meats is very different, taurine helps balance out that amino acid ratio so that it's a little bit more like what an animal would be getting if it were eating all the organs inside of a carcass. Along those same lines, we're also adding glycine. And glycine is another amino acid that is found in high quantities in collagen. So this is a very important thing to consider because over half of the protein in an animal comes from collagen when you actually take the whole body into account. However, when it comes to muscle meats, there's very little collagen in them because the collagen is found in things like hide, tendons, ligaments, and bone. So being able to supply glycine helps the amino acid profile resemble that which the animal would get again if it were eating the whole carcass. We're also going to be adding some vitamin E to this mixture. And that's really important too because vitamin E is actually really important for canines, though it's not found in very concentrated dosages in any part of an animal. However, it is actually spread throughout the animal in such a way that if they were consuming all of it, they would be getting a very significant dosage of vitamin E. So because of that, we're adding in some vitamin E to this mix. And finally, we're going to be adding some kelp powder in order to get things like iodine and some other tiny micro minerals that will assist the animal in having healthier glandular function. So basically what we're doing is we're taking all those ingredients, we're making the proper measurements and making sure that everything matches what is necessary for the animal so that they get what they need on a daily basis. We're going to be putting all that into our specialized equipment in order to make a ground meat mix, and then we're going to be creating our loaves from that and then feeding our animals. A lot of attention and research and planning has gone into finding these nutrients and approximating what an animal would actually eat in the wild in the context of a sanctuary that cannot feed a whole animal and that is on a budget. At Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary, we're always doing our best at making the lives and the health of our animals better. And hopefully you've seen that with this diet, that's another step in that direction of optimizing the lives and the care that we give to the rescues at our sanctuary, Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary. So hopefully this video was informative and useful to you, and if you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave us a comment somewhere, send us an email, get in contact. We're always happy to get your questions and concerns and comments. So it was very nice being with you here today, and have a great day.